The Obsidian Shroud was a graveyard where dead stars went to rot. Choked by toxic green radiation, hyper-dense dust clouds, and the hollowed-out skeletons of ancient wars. No civilized species came here willingly. To the galactic concord, this entire sector of space simply did not exist. But for scavengers, outlaws, and those who wished to be forgotten, it was a home. Inside the cramped cockpit of a battered, rusted salvage rig named the Rust Bucket, a human named Jax stared out into the glowing haze. Humanity was still a young, strange face in the wider cosmos. They weren't the strongest, nor were they the smartest. Alien empires looked down on them, calling them clumsy, stubborn, and dangerously unpredictable. But they had one trait that terrified and baffled the galaxy. Humans could survive anywhere, and they possessed an absurd, irrational urge to fix things that were broken. Suddenly, the console blared. A high-pitched rhythmic pulse cut through the heavy static of the local sensors. It wasn't an automated distress beacon. It was organic. A weak, fading biosignature. Jax adjusted his respirator, his fingers flying over the manual controls. He steered his ship deeper into the nebula, navigating through floating fragments of titanium armor and frozen debris. The signal was coming from the lower cargo hold of a derelict military cruiser, a ghost ship left behind by the extinct Xylar Empire. He docked the Rust Bucket against the frozen emergency hatch. With a heavy plasma cutter in his gloved hands, Jax stepped into the dark, freezing hallways of the ghost ship. The air inside had been dead for centuries, smelling of dry metal, ozone, and toxic chemicals. His heavy boots echoed against the steel floor as he descended into the absolute darkness. When his flashlight beam finally cut through the shadows of the lower cargo hold, Jax froze. His breath caught in his throat. They were not cargo. They were living, breathing creatures. 3 young Astra-Phoenixes, legendary cosmic avians genetically engineered to act as living, warp-capable weapons. When fully grown, these magnificent eagle-like beasts could channel raw plasma through their wings and soar through space. But these 3 were just fledglings, barely past infancy, and they had been treated with unimaginable cruelty. Their glowing gold feathers were dull, matted with dried oil and black grease. Their razor-sharp talons had been brutally clipped, preventing them from gripping or defending themselves. Worst of all, heavy, flashing, neural-dampening collars were bolted around their thin necks, dripping glowing green coolant that hissed as it burned their sensitive skin. Hearing Jax's footsteps, the 3 fledglings hissed. Their hollow bones rattled in fear. The largest one tried to ignite its plasma fire, but its fractured wings only sputtered weak, pathetic blue sparks before dying out. They crowded together in the freezing corner, hiding behind one another, their golden eyes wide with pure, absolute terror. They had survived the dark, but they believed this new 2-legged intruder had come to finish them off. Jax didn't move. He stood completely still, letting the beam of his flashlight point away from the creature's sensitive eyes and onto the cold metal floor. He knew the dark history of the Astra-Phoenix. They were creatures of pride and immense power, but after their creators died out, they became targets. Hunters used them as living batteries, or starved them to make them vicious weapons of war. To them, any two-legged creature meant pain, chains, and hunger. "Hey there. Easy," Jax murmured, his voice dropping into a low, rumbling Terran baritone. "I'm not going to hurt you." The largest of the three fledglings, likely the protector of the group, stepped forward. Its left eye was clouded by a nasty chemical burn, and its chest heaved with shallow, painful breaths. It snapped its heavy, curved beak viciously, a desperate, final warning. It was ready to fight to the death to protect its siblings. "Yeah, you're a tough one, aren't you?" Jax said softly. Slowly, deliberately, he sank to his knees. He took off his heavy helmet, letting them see his human face, his soft eyes, and his lack of fangs. He made himself as small and unthreatening as possible. He wanted them to see he was not a predator. He unclipped his heavy toolkit and slid it gently across the floor. The metal clattered. The birds flinched, the smallest one letting out a high-pitched, mournful shriek that cut straight to Jax's heart. "I know. It's loud. It's scary. But look," Jax whispered, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a ration bar made of synthetic protein paste. It was sweet and smelled strongly of nutrient fats. He broke off a piece and tossed it gently, landing it right in front of the alpha's talons. The three birds stared at the food, then at Jax. In the cold, cruel galaxy, nobody gave away food for free. Everything was a transaction or a trap. The air in the room was dropping below freezing, and the toxic coolant from their collars was leaking faster, staining their neck feathers a sickening neon green. Jax could see the smallest bird shivering violently. Its body was shutting down. If those collars weren't removed within the hour, the neural feedback would burn out their nervous systems. "You have to trust me," Jax whispered, his voice steady. "Just a little bit. Please." The alpha bird sniffed the ration bar. Driven by days of starvation and the strange, warm presence of the human, it snatched the piece, retreated into the shadows, and immediately pushed it toward the shivering, smallest sibling. It didn't eat a single bite itself. It fed its family first. Jax watched this act of pure, selfless love, and in that moment, he knew he would do whatever it took to save them. For nearly an hour, Jax did not rise from his knees. He simply sat in the freezing cold and spoke. He didn't expect them to understand his English words, but he knew they understood tone. He talked about the green fields of Earth, the clanking engines of the rust bucket, and the stupid jokes his grandfather used to tell. His voice became a steady, predictable anchor in the terrifying, dark silence of the ghost ship. Slowly, the alpha bird crept forward again. Its back legs dragged slightly. The heavy collar was already partially paralyzing its lower body. It stared at Jax with its one good golden eye. It was searching for deceit, for the sudden movement of a hunter. But it found none. "Okay, buddy, here's the deal," Jax said, keeping his hands wide and empty. He slid forward on his knees, inch by inch. "I have to get close. I have to touch you. It's going to be scary, but I promise, the pain will stop." He reached out his gloved hand, keeping it low, aiming for the smallest fledgling. The alpha bird immediately hissed, a spark of blue plasma dancing along its curved beak. The heat of it was intense, singeing the hair on Jax's knuckles. I know, Jax whispered, looking directly into the alpha's eye. But look at her. She's dying. Let me help. With agonizing slowness, Jax pressed his palm flat against the smallest fledgling's chest. The young bird went rigid, its heart hammering like a machine gun under its ribs. It tasted the air, smelling the grease, sweat, and intense warmth radiating from the human. Humans were warm-blooded creatures, a concept alien to many reptile-like species in the galaxy. Jax reached for his mechanical laser spanner. The alpha bird watched his hand like a predator, its beak hovering just inches from Jax's bare neck. One wrong move, and Jax's throat would be torn open. Jax ignored the deadly beak. He focused entirely on the rusted, pulsing lock of the neural collar. He slid the spanner beneath the heavy metal clamp. The tool whined, heating the ancient lock, and then, click! The dampener snapped open with a sharp hiss. A cloud of toxic coolant vapor escaped, and the heavy metal collar clattered loudly against the deck. The smallest bird gave a sudden gasping breath as the paralyzing weight vanished from its mind. The moment the collar fell away, the smallest fledgling let out a long, shuddering sigh. But the sudden release of pressure left its body weak and exhausted. It collapsed sideways, its head thumping onto the freezing steel deck. Jax didn't hesitate. He pulled off his heavy, insulated thermal jacket. Underneath, his body heat radiated into the sub-zero room. He wrapped the thick jacket around the shivering starbird, lifted the creature into his arms, and pulled it tightly against his chest. To any alien species, this was absolute madness. Astra-Phoenixes were dangerous, unpredictable apex predators. To squeeze one was to invite a violent death. But humans were mammalian brood-warmers, driven by an instinct to hold and protect. The small bird frozen as Jax's strong arms encircled it. But then, feeling the intense, life-saving heat radiating from the human's chest, it did something that shook Jax to his core. It stopped shivering. It buried its beak deep under Jax's chin, seeking more warmth. A soft, trilling vibration started in its chest. A pure, beautiful purr of absolute relief. The other two fledglings stared in stunned silence. Their sibling, who had been screaming in agony for days, was now singing a song of safety. "Your turn," Jax said to the alpha, gesturing with his hand. The alpha didn't snap this time. It dragged its heavy body forward, leaning its head directly against Jax's knee. It exposed its neck, presenting the cruel collar to the human. Jax worked quickly, his fingers steady despite the biting cold. And then, click. The second collar fell. He moved to the third bird. Click! The last collar hit the floor. As the oppressive neural fields vanished, the three starbirds didn't run. They didn't fly away. Weak, cold, and overwhelmed by the sudden absence of pain, they crawled forward, collapsing into a tangled pile of feathers, talons, and wings right on top of Jax. Jax sat there on the freezing steel floor of a dead alien ship, pinned beneath three cosmic predators, keeping them warm with nothing but his own stubborn human body heat. For the first time in their lives, the wounded starbirds knew what it felt like to be safe. It took Jax nearly 2 hours to carry the fledglings back to the rust bucket. He had to cradle them one by one, treating them like fragile glass despite their heavy, dense bones. He bypassed his dusty cargo hold entirely and brought them straight into his cramped, warm living quarters. He cranked the ship's thermostat up to a tropical 35 degrees Celsius and scattered every blanket, sleeping bag, and spare jumpsuit he owned across the floor, creating a massive, chaotic nest. For the next 3 days, Jax didn't sleep for more than an hour at a time. He became a nurse. He used a medical laser to sanitize the chemical burns on their necks, applying soothing gel. He mixed pulverized protein bars with warm water and fed them by hand, coaxing them to eat. The galaxy viewed humans as spacefaring brutes who built oversized engines and fought dirty in wars. But they never saw this side of humanity. They never saw the tireless, obsessive caregiving that humans gave to the weak. The starbirds healed at a terrifying, genetically engineered rate. By the 4th day, their dull, oily feathers began to fall away, replaced by shimmering, iridescent violet and gold plumage that caught the light of the cabin. They no longer hissed when Jax entered. Instead, the moment his heavy boots clicked against the floorboards, 3 heads would snap up, their golden eyes glowing with pure excitement. They became his shadow. When Jax was squeezed under the main console fixing a blown fuse, the Alpha would sit by his feet, tilted its head, and watched the sparks with curiosity. When he ate his simple meals, the smallest one, whom he had named Sunny, would perch on the back of his pilot chair, gently preening his messy hair with its massive, terrifying beak. They had learned a new, absolute truth. The universe was a cruel, dark place, but the human was safe. The human was home. The peace did not last. On the 6th day, the alarms of the rust bucket shrieked, a piercing red alert that shattered the quiet cabin. A massive shadow fell over the cockpit view screen, blotting out the faint starlight of the nebula. A sleek, heavily armed corvette had blocked their exit path. It bore the jagged, terrifying insignia of the Vren Syndicate, a ruthless cartel of illegal bioharvesters, hunters, and slave traders. They had been tracking the distress signal of the old Xylar cruiser, searching for their lost, expensive cargo. Unidentified salvage vessel. A cold, clicking alien voice rasped over the comms channel. You are in possession of property belonging to the Vren Syndicate. Power down your engines and prepare for boarding. If you resist, we will vaporize your hull and sift through your ashes for the scrap. Jax looked at the monitor, his jaw tightening. His ship had no military shields, and his only weapon was a weak mining laser meant for melting asteroids, not cutting through military armor. In the back of the cabin, the 3 starbirds sensed the shift in tension. The air in the room grew suddenly hot, smelling of dry ozone. The Alpha's gold feathers began to crackle with faint, blue static electricity. Their ancient instincts were flaring up. They recognized the frequency of the cartel's ships, the same ships that had brought them pain and chains. They began to panic, crowding behind Jax's chair, their eyes wide with renewed horror. Jax stood up from his pilot's seat. He turned away from the console to face them. He knelt down, placing a calm, warm hand on the Alpha's broad beak, silencing its frantic trilling. "Listen to me," Jax said, his voice deadly calm and filled with absolute steel. "They took you from the stars. They put chains on you. But this is a human ship now, and humans never give up their family." He walked back to the controls, locked his fingers around the thruster grips, and smiled a grim, terrifying human smile. Jax didn't power down his engines. Instead, he slammed the thrusters to maximum, aiming the rust bucket straight at the Vren corvette's primary hangar bay. It was an insane, suicidal maneuver, a classic human reaction when backed into a corner. The Vren ship opened fire. Plasma bolts tore through the rust bucket's outer hull. The alarms screamed, decompression alerts flashing red as the metal groaned. Jax was thrown against the console, a sharp piece of metal gashing his forehead. Warm red blood began to drip down his face. Seeing their human bleed changed something deep inside the young Astra-Phoenixes. The fear in their eyes vanished, replaced by an ancient cosmic fury. The three fledglings let out a synchronized, deafening shriek that shattered the glass of the cabin's displays. Their feathers ignited into a brilliant, blinding solar fire, lighting up the entire ship. They were no longer broken. They were loved, and they were protective. The Alpha leapt forward, pressing its glowing, fiery talons directly against the ship's main power grid conduit. Instead of draining the ship, it injected its own raw, bioengineered plasma energy directly into the rust bucket's engines and mining laser. "Holy crap," Jax muttered as the entire weapon console turned blue, overloading with cosmic power. The mining laser, usually a weak yellow beam, erupted into a massive, blinding torrent of starlight. The beam sliced through the Vren corvette's military shields like wet paper, cleaving their weapon systems in half in a single, devastating blast. The enemy ship veered away, burning and crippled, fleeing into the deep nebula. As the dust settled, the cabin grew quiet. The starbirds extinguished their flames, leaving the room smelling of ozone and warmth. The smallest bird, Sunny, nudged Jax's bleeding forehead, whimpering softly with concern. Jax wiped the blood away, laughing weakly as he hugged the massive bird's warm neck. "Yeah, I'm okay," Jax breathed, looking out at the vast, open galaxy ahead of them. "Come on, let's find a better place to call home." This is the great paradox of humanity in the cosmos. The galaxy often fears humans for their capacity for war, their crude technology, and their unpredictable nature. They call them space orcs and avoid them in the dark. But they forget that the same hands that can build weapons of destruction will also spend hours cradling a broken, dying creature in the freezing cold. They forget that human empathy is a force of nature, capable of healing the deepest wounds, shattering the strongest chains, and turning terrified prey into fierce, loyal protectors. In the end, the galaxy learned a valuable lesson. If you hurt the innocent, pray that a human doesn't find them first. Because once a human claims you as family, not even the stars themselves can stand in their way.